Hey, what's up, family? Today I'm going to show you how to create your own kitchen apron that not only protects your clothes, but also adds a touch of your unique personality to your cooking adventures. Let's begin. Hey, what's up, family? My name is Mia, and welcome to my Afro Bohemian home. This is a channel where we focus on embracing sustainable living with a cultural twist. So if you're new here and are interested in learning how to live a self-sufficient, sustainable, and simple life, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content. In today's project, here are the materials that we will be using. Two types of fabric, which is 45 or 60 inches wide, sewing thread, sewing machine, scissors or ruler, sewing pattern, fusible interfacing, an iron and ironing board, and fabric weights or washers. Today we will create the foundation of our apron using a pattern by McCall's called It's So Simple L9444. I purchased this from a local Walmart in their fabric and sewing notion section. Now, please note that we will start with this pattern, but I will add some cool changes along the way to spice it up. In the original design, the apron only used one fabric design. So what I decided to do was create a reversible style. So for this apron, I used some of my green African print fabric for the outside and some brown and white polka dot fabric for the inside and the pockets, and the apron tie. The first step was to cut the fabric to 1 3/8 yard or 49 inches. But before you cut the fabric, make sure that it is ironed and folded in half because the pattern will call for you to lay it on the fold. Next, we have to prepare the pattern for cutting. So similar to what I said about the fabric, instead of using the pattern straight out, I like to stretch it out, cut it, and iron it before I use it because it makes so much easier to manage. And another thing to note is when I cut it, I usually don't cut directly on the line. I may go a smidge away from the line so that I can have some leeway for mistakes when I cut it on the fabric. Also, keep in mind that the pattern packet does include apron sizes for adults and children, and it also includes a pattern for oven mitts. Today, we are using the adult pattern. One thing I like about using a pattern is that in the instructions, they usually show you how to lay your pattern to get the most out of your fabric. So this is the layout that we will use. Now, notice where the patterns lay on the fold versus the selvage. The apron front facing and the tie should be touching the fold in some shape or form. Now that our pattern is laid out, next I'm going to pin it down or use the fabric weights. Now, to let you in on a little secret, since I had a large rotary, I ended up cutting both fabrics at the same time. Thankfully, this turned out great and it looked pretty good. Now, side note, the pattern does include a 5/8 seam allowance, so you don't have to worry about that as well. Now that I'm done with pinning, the next step is to cut the pieces out. Now, I already cut out the apron part. What you're seeing right now is me cutting out the pocket and the facing part of the apron. Now that you're done cutting the patterns from the fabric, next we're going to be using a couple of the patterns to cut pieces from the infusible fabric. The point of interfacing is to give the pocket some type of stability, and having fusible interfacing is beneficial because you can just iron them to the fabric, which we will do shortly. Once the pieces are cut, make sure you have one piece of interfacing per pocket. Next, we must now cut it down some so that the fabric can fold over the interfacing. I used a pocket pattern and my rotary to mark the space to cut. Then I took a ruler and removed the excess. So the piece I forgot to record is me cutting out the facing pattern. Make sure that when you're cutting that piece out, that it should be on the fold like it was on the fabric. Now it's time to fuse the pocket to the interfacing and fold. To fuse, I just centered the fuse on the wrong side of the fabric, lined it with the top, and sat my iron on top for about 10 seconds. After it fused, I let it cool for 10 seconds, then I started to fold the excess fabric or seam allowance on the side and the bottom edges and pressed with the iron. Once everything was folded and pressed, instead of stitching the top, I repeated this step with the inside part of the fabric, laid them on top with wrong sides facing so that I can stitch them together later. Once I was done, I pinned them together and I took them to the sewing machine for stitching. To hold the pieces together, I sewed around the edge of the entire pocket first, then I placed them on the apron. Using the apron pattern, I found the location of the pockets and placed them accordingly. And to make sure they were even, I also used my ruler. Now, once the pockets were placed, I attached them to the apron with pins. Then I stitched close to the side and bottom edges. I made sure to stitch over the first seam that I did that held the two pieces together so it can look clean. Then I went back and stitched 1/4 inch away from the first stitch to do like a double stitch look. Now this may sound silly, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it anyway. Make sure that you leave an opening at the top of the pocket that you can put your hand in, because sometimes you can get so lost in the sauce that we can stitch the whole square and then realize later on that we accidentally didn't leave a space. So that's just a FYI. So another step that I missed, but I wanted to go back and record, was fusing the interface to the outer edge of the wrong side of the external fabric. This step, although initially missed, shame to say, is meant to hold the apron tie in place once it's brought through the apron. When I recorded this part, I actually finished the apron, but I took the top back apart so that I can record this step. To create this piece, I took the fabric part of the apron facing and I placed and pinned it to the apron, right sides facing and aligning it to the top of the apron. Make sure as you are attaching this piece that you leave 1 inch openings at the top around the neck area and one on each side under the armpit area. This is where the apron tie will go. Once that is done, press the seams and then fold the fabric overcast over, and then stitch each side close to the edge to hold the seam down. Next, pin the sides together and sew the outer edge towards the armholes. Afterwards, create another 1 inch stitch from the side to form the castings for the tie. Now that we have a space to hold the apron tie, we can attach the other pattern to the inside of the apron. Note that you do not see the casting because this is before I realized that I missed a step. Now to do this is done by attaching the fabric right sides facing to the apron with pockets using either pins or clips. Make sure to leave the openings so that we can pull the tie through, and also leave an opening at the bottom to flip the apron inside out. Once everything is clipped, it's time to take it to the sewing machine. At the sewing machine, we are going to sew a 5/8 seam around the edge of the apron. Remember to keep those openings available. Once you are done with sewing, Trim the excess threads, snip the corners, and begin to turn the apron inside out. Once it's turned inside out, put it to the side, and now let's make the apron tie. So just like the apron, I wanted to make my apron tie double-sided as well. So I took the 4 pieces and grouped them into 2 ties. One tie had each fabric pattern. Then I turned the tie pieces of each fabric right size facing and clipped them and sewed them down one side and across one end of each tie. Once both ties were sewn, I then clipped and sewed one side of the ends together so that it created one long tie. And to make the final sewing process easier, I folded and ironed the edges of both sides together and then ironed the final fold. Afterwards, I sewed around the edge of the entire apron tie and clipped any excess threads. Now for the final step, adding the tie to the apron. So you could do this one of 2 ways. One way is that you can use a safety pin, attach it to the end one side of the tie, and then insert the tie into the holes around the armpit and the neck of the apron. For me, I ended up finding a clip and glide bodkin at our local craft store, and that made the job easier. And if you can get a hold of one, I strongly recommend it. Once I added the tie and made sure that everything was straight, I tried it on and voila, a custom apron made by yours truly. Well, there you have it, how to make your own unique kitchen apron. If you found this video helpful and want to see more, please hit that like button, notification bell, and subscribe to our channel. That's it. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time. Peace.